that's the main drive. And we're talking to a place where they're talking about that little bit on this side, but UDOT has it mentioned. This is the other one that's been established forever.
Is that where it is now?
There's a curb cut there, but there's also another curb cut there.
So are they gonna use that one?
As a rear. Well, I had to move it. So this water comes in onto it here, so reconnect. Because right now the water goes down.
You know, when the neighbors said to, because it was just so narrow.
Well, I was just, the only thing I'm wondering about is that back road, right across from you guys, that's the only one, like, what would they do if you took that out? Because wouldn't that be the one that the big trucks would go in the back?
Well, here's where the traffic's only gonna come off the state.
The trucks are gonna deliver, right?
It's just a soft.
We'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Planning Commission this afternoon. We'll begin with an invocation. I've asked Karen Jeffries to offer that.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful that we can meet this beautiful spring day for our Planning Commission meeting for the city of Orem. We're grateful for this wonderful city that we have to live in and grateful for the freedoms that we enjoy here. And we pray for thy spirit to be with us as we make choices and decisions, that we can come to consensus and come up with good ideas and plans for the city. We're thankful for this opportunity and pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Before we begin, we'd like to welcome Mr. Cochran as a new member of the Planning Commission. Grateful for his service. We'll remind everyone that these proceedings are being broadcast on YouTube. And with that, we'll begin with item 3.1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. This first item is a preliminary plat located at 695 North, 800 East. You see the outline of the property. The applicant is simply wanting to divide the existing one lot, larger lot into two lots. One with the existing house will remain facing 800 East. The other one will have a new lot facing the other street. The improvements on that new street will be as part of this. They'll have to put those in with lot number 2. And so they'll basically come back to us, do a final subdivision for 2 lots rather than the one. So fairly straightforward. Be glad to address any questions that you may have.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Bench? Is the applicant present? Anything you'd like to add? Okay. Any comments or?
And when would you like to get it done?
As soon as we can.
I'm within shooting range from that lot where I live.
Pardon?
I'm within a short shot range. I could throw a baseball to that lot.
You're aware of it.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments or concerns? We ready for a motion?
Yeah, I can do that. Let's see, we're the final, right? I will make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat of Martins Cove subdivision at 695 North, 800 East in the R8 zone.
Mr. Moulton's made a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Mr. Cochran seconds that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 3.2.
So item 3.2 is a preliminary plat and final plat and site plan combined into one. Basically, it's at 1830 North. The property itself is 1900 North, just south of the old, I forgot the grocery store that was there. Allen's, thank you. It's a vacant lot. It's been that vacant for quite some time. They're coming in and proposing a auto dealership. It is currently zoned C2, which does allow dealerships. You can see the 2 dealerships, they'll build the south one first, and within the 2 years, they'll build the second one to the north. So they'll have show area along the State Street frontage. Some proposed landscaping, they will be separating the sidewalk that's on State Street. So they'll have an 8-foot planter strip with the trees. You can see the parking lot trees as well. This is the building that will be built first, 24 feet in height. They'll have 4 bays along with the offices and things to the south of that. This is the backside, east elevation that you'll see there. Future building that you'll see coming in at a later date. These are the elevations that go along with that. So you'll be approving the site plan, and if they build it within 2 years, they wouldn't have to come back to the council or planning commission. They'll just pull a permit and build the second building because it is approved as part of the site plan. The storage building that you see that's behind that, that's the elevation that you see there. So the storage building is right there. It has to be equal to the height of the building or the setback off of the residential street, or excuse me, residential property, which is why you see this kind of a sloped roof. So by the time it gets to this point, it's set back at least 20 feet off of that property line. Any questions that I can address?
So the only access onto an actual street is on 1830.
So there's 2 accesses, one closer to State Street and the other one's over here. So they'll have 2. They'll have a reciprocal access easement going north this direction that would access all the way to 2000 north, or access points on State Street through the Neaters, or the Neaters overall property.
That access that goes north, will that be constructed at this point in time, or will it?
I believe they are. What's outlined in the darker color will be part of this site plan.
And that looks like it ties to the existing asphalt to
Yes.
the north there.
Yep.
So there'll be some dirt in between, probably, at least for now.
This will be connected as far as it's shown on the site plan
Okay, well, yeah.
with asphalt.
There's dirt right there.
Yeah, that's all parking lot in there now. Anyway. if you-
This section that you see here is actually, so that's the leading edge of the asphalt. This is dirt right now.
Okay.
That's what
Yeah. Yep. So according to this site plan, this would be connected with asphalt.
Okay.
You can see there's a note right there. I don't know if you can read it, but it says asphalt road access.
And there is landscaping associated with this.
Yes. So the streets will have the required amount of trees. The parking lots will also be trees in their end islands as well.
Looks like the sidewalk is set back.
Yes,
That's
8
big.
feet off of State Street. So they were willing to, flip that sidewalk.
For that buffer zone for the landscaping and then sidewalk, and 15 feet total?
8 feet to the sidewalk.
Right.
Yep.
And-
So there is a sidewalk also on 1830. That looks like it's probably a 4-foot sidewalk.
Yeah, that will
5
remain
foot.
combination.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Bench? Is the applicant present? Is there anything you'd like to add? If you could,
Unless there's questions that I.
could you step to the microphone, give us your name?
Yes, I'm, excuse me, gotta be careful how you touch that, it's noisy. I'm Rob Reynolds, Rockworks Land and Reynolds Brothers Construction is, so yes, we're the developer and acquirer of the site here a number of months ago, and one of my relatives actually is the proposed tenant that wants to move in, and he's currently just across the street, frankly, from this and down a little further south. Expansing onto a much nicer facility than where they are.
Any questions for Mr. Reynolds? We will.
Done.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
This is a public hearing. We'd remind you or ask you to state your name and your location of residence, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes. So we'll go ahead and open that public hearing now. Step to the microphone, please.
My name's Tim Christensen. I live within about 2,000 feet or 1,000 feet of the property. Just a question for the commission. Do any of you know how many automobile dealerships there are between 1800 North and 4th North in Orem?
If you do, I'd like to know.
I do. There's over 18. And they're stacked up here in North Orem. My concerns are traffic, light pollution. I don't see any indication of lighting on there. We have terrible light pollution up there. When I've been in the city almost as long as Brent Sundberg, or Brent back here. And so I've been here all my life, and I used to could go outside and look at the sky at night and I could see stars. We can't do that anymore. That'll have an effect. Noise from those big diesel trucks running, okay? Traffic problems. I think he said the property there is on 1725 North. Is that where their dealership is?
Currently.
The current one? Yeah. Well, I just went by there today and there were like 14 cars parked off State Street, not in the lots, out on our street. We can't get up and down our street. We have these big diesel trucks running up and down the street all day long and all night long. Smog. How many cars are we going to put in this lot? How many trucks are they going to have space for in the lot?
There's about 100 parking spots.
100 parking spots. So they're going to have 100 trucks. Do we need another 100 trucks in Orem City? I mean, look at all the development of all these multi-unit housings. They're all bringing in multiple cars. Why don't we have these kind of facilities like Linden does? They have an auto park. Why do we have to put it along State Street where the revenue generating retail small businesses are that helps Orem City the most? Hang on a second. Linden and Pleasant Grove don't have any, but maybe one. I think they have one auto dealership from North Orem all the way to the viaduct in Pleasant Grove. Why do we need so many of them? Has Neaters approved that access across their parking lot? It's a question. The traffic is terrible as it is up there. There are tons of accidents at 2000 North and State Street of people trying to cross over State Street from either side of the businesses. We have 200 and some odd apartments, senior apartments in there. We have 200 and some odd other apartments in there that are creating traffic problems, pollution problems, noise problems, light pollution problems, and I stand firmly against this particular project. We have not been told anything about what the signage will be, whether there'll be signage on the street, on the building. What effect is that going to have on the light pollution? Our neighborhood up there is totally, terribly light pollution damaged. We also, in your previous planning stuff, you call that area a downtown of Orem. I've never seen an auto dealership in the middle of a downtown. My time's expired. I'm firmly and strongly against this proposal as it'll damage the quality of life of our neighborhood.
Thank you. Seeing no one else step to the microphone, okay.
I thought there was a lot more people here for this, so. I just moved to Orem. My name's Melanie LaFranca. I just moved to Orem right behind where this is. And my concern is traffic too. I just wonder how, I know he was explaining it to me, how people are gonna come through Neaters, but this little strip down here that's by the little vet store where I take my dog, I feel like that's gonna get really busy and people are gonna go through that way because everyone's looking for a back road in Orem. Everywhere you go, everyone wants to avoid State Street as much as they can, especially in that area, because it's kind of crazy. And there's a lot of older people in my neighborhood that are not going to want to go that way either. So, I think it's something to consider. And also, I just wanted to request, next time you guys send these out, I can't read this. I gave it to my daughter, she's 20. She couldn't read this. It's so small. And I couldn't even find where to come for this. I had to call 3 different people to find out where I was supposed to go. So it'd be super helpful next time. It'd be even better than a map to just say, this is where the meeting is, this is when it is, and here's a website. You could look at the picture online. Then I can zoom in and kind of see what it even looks like. Because this is my first, bigger picture of what this is. And I bet a lot of my neighbors just threw this away because they don't understand or even know what it is. So that's my... Please, can you make a bigger flyer request? And please, can we talk a little bit more about the traffic because I feel like I need some more understanding on how that's going to be. Thanks.
Thank you.
City Council chambers.
Okay. With that, we'll close the public hearing and,
What?
There's some.
Okay.
Those answers from the developer?
well, we will answer them after we close the public hearing. We're giving people an opportunity to speak at this point.
My name is Susan DeGearing, and my husband owns, and I own the Bourbonwood Animal Hospital that is directly across the street from the on 1830 North. And we have some of the same concerns that the lady ahead just spoke about, the traffic and the parking along there, because it's already pretty crowded, and the back streets, because people do go along and through that little neighborhood, and their streets are narrower than the regular roads in Orem. And then I just wondered a little more about the driveway that's the back entrance to that's right across from our clinic. I wanted a few more questions answered about that, and but I'm not opposed to the project, but I just have some concerns also, my husband and I. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and I think, Mr. Goodrich, many of these issues relate to traffic and parking and so forth. Can you address any of those for us?
Yeah, I'll start with the traffic stuff, and then I might pass it off to our attorney for about, what the land use is and what the current status is of the property. One of the things about the access that is shown up to the Neaters property, when the Neaters subdivision was done a few years ago, there was an access easement that was obtained with that subdivision so that not only the Neaters, but the other out parcels that could be developed south of Neaters could be able to use that access to get up to 2000 North, which is a collector type street, and be able to get to the traffic signal at State Street if necessary. So all of those businesses in that area will be able to use that because yes, people do try to find alternate routes to State Street, and that's one of the reasons why that was put in place. There is, one of the streets that people try to find to the east is 400 East. I think if they try to do that, they're going to find that it's a very circuitous path, and they'll find a better path to be able to take up to 2000 North. Whether they want to go to State Street or whether they want to go to 4th West, this access easement through Neaters to the north will help people to be able to do that. We did line the accesses up in that area. The existing two accesses that are just north of this property on State Street. The developer that developed the senior housing on the other side of the road, we had them line up the accesses so that we have a good access management scenario. Further south on State Street, we have lots of business accesses, and they're kind of scattered around, and it's hard to make a left turn sometimes if you have a driveway on the other side of the street that's not lined up. These accesses in this area are lined up with the two accesses south of Neaters. So this truck development will, truck lot, whatever it's called, I can't remember, not only will have the accesses on the public street to the south, but we'll be able to get up to those accesses that are also on State Street. And so there are multiple accesses for the property. And I think Mr. Earl has his code book opened to what the zone of the property is. Are you done? Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple comments regarding sort of the Planning Commission's role in looking at this proposal. The Planning Commission doesn't really have a lot of discretion in approving or denying this type of application. Basically, Utah law says that if it's a permitted use and it complies with all the ordinance requirements, the Planning Commission has to approve it. Basically, the role of the Planning Commission is not to decide if it's a good idea or not a good idea to have this kind of use here. but it's rather to see if it complies with the current ordinance. And if it does comply with the current ordinance, then the Planning Commission has to approve it. And that's something that Utah state law requires, that if an applicant submits an application to do something with their property and it complies with the local zoning ordinance, it has to be approved. There's no discretion to really talk about whether we like it or don't like it, or it's a good idea or not a good idea. Those decisions have already been made by the City Council in adopting the zoning ordinance and approving what uses are approved in each particular zone. So hopefully that will help clarify the role of the Planning Commission for those in the audience.
Any comments on parking? That seems to be an issue.
So the parking meets the requirement. In fact, they probably have over required parking based on the fact that it's a dealership. So they will have space available for their displays as well as the required parking for their building that they're proposing. And just to clarify, we treat the dealerships just like any other small business. I mean, we allow the opportunity, whether it's a dealership, whether it's a retail store, whether it's a fast food restaurant, I mean, they all have the same opportunity in this particular zoning ordinance to do the same type of thing. So we're not, singling some use out because we, for some reason, don't like it. This is simply just allowing anybody to come in as long as it meets the requirements, like Mr. Earl stated. We're processing it through and request that it get approved. So.
Okay, thank you. Let's bring this back to the commission. Any comments or questions that?
I was wondering if Mr. Reynolds could help with the lighting. Light pollution, light shining facing the neighborhood, any of that we need to be concerned about.
Yes.
The planning, or your city grouping, as far as your planning group, has already dealt with that. We've had photometrics done for the lights that are in the front of the parking lot. There's also a demising wall between us and residential, which is also a city ordinance for commercial to a residential zone. So there's already a fence that's going to be constructed along the back of the property that is for that purpose of light, as well as they've had us do a light photometric of the property to make sure that we sit within the proper lighting so we aren't blinding anybody or the like. So yes, those thoughts have been processed and looked at.
There's also, if there's direct glare into the neighborhood, so somebody calls us and says, hey, the light is shining directly into my window, then we would require them to put some type of shield. So there is some ordinances set up that would protect against the direct glare. But if it's shining down into the parking lot, I mean, there's going to be some light spillover, but not direct glare.
Isn't that part of the approval process that the city council will have to vote on?
The planning commission is the final approving authority. It does not go to council.
I'm not for all of the details of the building, though. The planning commission.
Planning commission is it? Yep.
I'm new, just today.
A wall wouldn't take care of lighting issues, though, would it? I mean, it wouldn't be that tall that it would.
Well, there's a 7-foot masonry wall that's required. Any lighting on the backside of that would have to be shielded so it doesn't have direct glare into the neighborhood.
Yeah. Right.
Other than that, would be no requirement as far as, I mean, they could have lights in their parking lot. I'm assuming they're going to be dimmed overnight, but there will be some light. They just can't have direct glare into residential zones.
That's good.
And as far as the lighting pollution goes, just as that you talked about, not you, Mr. Reynolds, but the gentleman in the back spoke about, lighting pollution is an issue with growth. No, I'm just saying that as an opinion. I don't like the lights that Orem City currently has because of the cause of lighting pollution. But my vote was overruled. So that's something that you're probably going to have to take up at a later date. And I would say, because I feel the same way. I'd like to look at Jupiter I can see Jupiter, but never mind that. Some of the other comets and things that come up. But
if you'll look at the design of this, all of the lighting that you're referring to is towards the front, towards the State Street side. The back of the buildings of the property is where will be closest to the residential, and that's where there's no real need for light back there, if you will. So we've taken that into consideration. This is not a property we're looking to build, and we plan on retaining this property and utilizing it for a number of years. So we want it to be conducive to the neighborhood as well as
Are the trucks, are we talking just,
Pickups.
okay, not big diesel truck,
Oh,
anything like that? Okay.
SUVs.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We ready to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that we accept this plan as, if I'm doing this correct.
We need
I
to
just
read-
lost my thing.
We need to read this. Right here.
I move that we accept or approve the final plat approval of the Reynolds Truck Center subdivision, Plat A, and preliminary plat and site plan approval of Reynolds Truck Center at 1900 North State Street in the C2 zone.
Mr. Cochran's made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Which one of you seconded?
Either one. Either one.
Karen-
Ms. Jeffrey?
Karen got me.
Sorry.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 3.3.
Thank you. 3.3 is the University Parkway Corridor Landscaping Plan as part of the Orem-Provo Transportation Improvement Project that you see under construction at this point. Ultimately will be the widening of University Parkway down into Provo and the installation of the BRT Bus Rapid Transit project along the corridor. As part of this project, the landscaping, it's been a long time in discussion with the city and with UDOT and with UTA in discussing what and how to keep the landscaping. The city several years ago fought hard to keep the landscaping. It was a corridor feel. We had 20 feet of landscaping. We wanted 20 feet of landscaping. Ultimately, with the widening needed for the project and keeping the 20 feet on either side, really dug into the properties, and they were losing hundreds of parking stalls, which was just unreasonable for the city to maintain that position. I mean, we were talking 50 to 60 to 100 per parcel, which just didn't make sense for a lot of these big retailers. So the city worked with the developers, UTA and UDOT, and come up with a different standard where we would allow 10 feet. In the majority of the corridor will have 10 feet of landscaping. Some areas that are tighter than that will have trees in the tree grates next to the parking lot. They'll have some parcels that have actually landscaping in front of the sidewalk. So it's a corridor feel, but there is some uniqueness about each of the properties that are going to be different. It's not going to be a standard set corridor. And so with that, we have developed, or the AECOM, which is the consultant that's doing the work for UTA, developed a landscaping plan, and we as a city are wanting to adopt that as a corridor landscaping plan. So instead of having a set 20-foot setback and all that has to be landscaped, it's going to be based on this appendix, TT, which is part of your ordinance, which represents a page of that. There's 45 pages of appendix. Each of the parcels are identified. This happens to be in front of Lowe's. On the top end of your drawing is Lowe's. So that's the landscaping that would be in front of Lowe's. The sidewalk itself will be in the right-of-way. So any landscaping that you see between the parkway and the sidewalk will actually be in the UDOT right-of-way, but it'll be maintained by the property owner. So as part of this project, we've had to modify our ordinances. We have a C1, a C2 zones. We have the PD zones, the PD5, PD12. All those zones front on that parkway, and so we've modified each of those zones to allow reference to Appendix TT. So there's no specific landscaping requirement other than what's shown now on this Appendix TT. So when the ordinance is passed, property owners will be responsible for their landscaping as it's installed, and then in the future we'll be maintaining it according to the appendix that will be adopted as part of the ordinance. With that, we've added language to require, ice, weeds, dirt, all that to be removed as a responsibility of the property owners as well, whether that's public sidewalk or if landscaping dies, they would also be required to replace it. Just some pictures of the trees that will be selected. So on the tree grates you can see in the top, the lacebark elm, common hackberry trees, and different ones. The landscape architect that was responsible for this has looked at the site, looked at the areas that they had 10 feet, where they didn't have 10 feet, and selected there's three types of trees that will be selected based on the width and ability for that to be able to grow at the roots. And then as far as salt tolerant, drought tolerant, all those types of things were taken into account. So these trees and the shrubs that are proposed all can withstand the climate change, the plowing of the roads, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully during the winters, we won't have a lot of shrubs getting killed because of the ice and the salt and different things. So it's been a long process coming. This is kind of the rendering of what it would look like when it's installed. So with that, we would request that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the council, updating the ordinance amendments that you see there in the different zones that we have, and then also adopting the Appendix TT, which would then be the corridor landscaping plan. Any questions that I can address?
As I understand, in the future, any property owner will be required to provide what's shown in this plan.
That's correct.
Is there an option for them to come in to the council and request a change? Or?
That's always an option, but the city, as far as staff is concerned, this would be the corridor plan, and unless the city wanted to redo that whole corridor, I don't think we would be in favor of. I mean, the city council obviously could entertain, an applicant can always make an application and go through that due process, but we would recommend that as a corridor feel and as a corridor plan, that we stick to this plan. Another point I want to make out is this is allowing each of the properties to be conforming to the landscaping requirement instead of legal non-conforming, because our ordinances differ as far as the landscaping requirements in each of those zones. This would then make them all conforming, and as long as they maintain it as installed, they would all be conforming.
So all of those businesses then would come into a conforming status?
Yes.
All up and down the corridor?
Correct.
And the city will be the initial planter of these things.
So our UTA and their contractor will actually be the ones installing.
Okay,
Yep.
but it's not,
City-
the businesses aren't going and buying the plants and putting them in.
No, it'll all be done by the contractor, inspected by the city, and all the, UDOT and all those will be a part of reviewing it, make sure it's installed correctly. Once it's approved and passed, I guess, then the property owner then will assume responsibility to maintain it.
Any other questions?
We did hold a neighborhood meeting last night, just to let you know. We noticed all the property owners. We sent out 180 notices. We had 3 businesses come in, Mr. Glacius from the car dealership, representative from Lowe's, and then a representative from the Carillon Square development. And so we talked to them about this. But
What was their response?
most of them we just explained, and then they've been dealing with UTA as far as the corridor and stuff, so they were familiar with it. We just kind of clarified some of the things, responsibilities, and the process going forward. But all seem to be in favor of the plan.
Good.
Generally, you sent out 180 plus probably, and on a couple of these other items that we discussed earlier on the 2 items, 3.1 and 3.2, what percentage of feedback do you get from the notices? Because you send out, you have public notices that are posted, you send it to the newspaper, so they're there, online too, by the way, I found out, and in Orem City, these things are available too. What kind of feedback do you generally get? If you were to guess a percentage, have you seen, say, from 180, you had 3 respond?
Can I try to answer that? These property owners, the ones that came to the meeting last night already knew about this. They just had extra questions. They wanted to become a little more informed. So the property owners along the corridor have already been approached to be able to purchase a frontage of their property for the project. And so I think that's probably why, I think you're probably thinking in your mind there was a low response. But actually, I think there's a pretty high level of knowledge about the project because they've already been approached multiple times through UTA's right-of-way people and UDOT people and some public involvement people who are out walking the corridor and talking to people. And the information that we're getting back is that the property owners want, their biggest desire is to be legally conforming once the project is done. And if we don't do this, they'll be what's that? Non-conforming, legal non-conforming, and they don't want that. So And we are taking, I mean, the old standard was the huge wide landscaping, and now we're going to something that's more of an urban type of a standard and a little bit more tight, and it's, yeah, we've been working on this plan with the property owners and the city council and the Transportation Advisory Commission for a year or more.
But to answer your question a different way, on the all in general, all the applications, so we're probably, depending on the application, there are some that are very controversial, and we get a pretty good response rate, but it's probably 5% or less that we get responses back, or somebody calls us, or in response to our notice.
Okay, that's, you know, my doctoral minor is statistics, and these things interest me a great deal as we come into this.
Yeah, in my experience, if somebody is really involved or it affects them personally, then they're going to be more apt to be involved. If it's just around the corner and they really don't care, we don't get a response back from them.
Okay.
Let me just give you a couple examples. So recently we had a couple neighborhood plans. We had open houses, and we had very good attendance, over 100 people at those meetings. Jason, when we put stuff out like this, we receive numerous calls. So on the Parkway, we've been answering questions with those owners for at least 6 to 8 months on the phone. So a lot of them knew what was coming. They might not have knew exactly how this plan was going to look until a few months ago, but we deal with a lot of that on the phone too, and that's why some of these meetings are a little less attended.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you. This item does require a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open the public hearing and invite anyone who would care to comment to step to the microphone. Seeing no one coming to the microphone, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Any further questions or discussion?
I just have a comment. I think it's, I really like this plan. I like the idea of the Parkway. I like that it's going to be structured and planned, but still there's some uniqueness about it. I think it's going to be lovely. It's a huge corridor into our city. So many people come up that hill, and it's going to be for a lot of people, it's going to be their feel of what Orem looks like. So I'm really quite excited about this, and I like it.
I agree too. I see this as a beautiful entryway.
And don't forget the State Street corridor, because that's going to have such a different look and feel.
Yes. Okay. I think we're ready for a motion then, and I will make that motion that we forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to amend sections 22-8-9A, 22-11-17R, 22-11-24E, 16, 22-11-47H4, and enact Appendix TT of the Orem City Code pertaining to landscaping requirements along the University Parkway corridor. Is there a second?
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the minutes from our last meeting, which was, what was the date?
April 19th.
April 19th?
I think it's 19th.
Okay. Any comments on the minutes from April 19th?
Wasn't here.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the Planning Commission from April 19th.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Director's comment. Just a minute or a comment?
I do have some comments.
Update.
Believe it or not. It's kind of rare, but just tell you a little bit about what's going on in the city. The city for quite some time has been interested in doing, do you all know what a 311 system is? Basically, any resident in the city would call 311, and it would go to certain phones here at the city, and that group of people would be able to answer and deal with any question that's asked from the public. So if I called in and said, hey, I want to rent the pavilion at Timpanogos Park on July 4th, this person could bring it up immediately on the system, say, yeah, it's available, it costs whatever, charge their charge card, and solve that problem right there. If they called up and said, hey, I want a yearly rec pass, do the same thing. If they called up and said, hey, what's the hours of the dog park? They would know that information. So it gives the residents one place to call, and eventually this center will remodel eventually and have it where the main entrance to the building will come to this center, and they'll have a counter there, and you'll be able to pay your water bill, do anything else at that counter, and not have to wander throughout the city trying to get your question answered. So that's coming in the works. We've hired a company, a software company that's got that developed, and we're testing it now. And we're actually starting to what we call a soft rollout, where just a few people are using that software, making sure it works properly. And then around July sometime, we'll probably have a big kickoff, announce it to the public. There's another thing online. It's called the Citizens Portal. You'll be able to jump on with an easy login and to be able to get answers to most of your questions right there as well. So we're just trying to make information a lot easier for the public and stop well, I don't know that question, transfer it to engineering. Well, engineering, you should have talked to Public Works. And so all that will be handled in one place. So I think it's a good deal. I think it'll be great for the citizens. So just want to let you know that's coming up. That's all I had.
Great. Thank you. I think with that, we're ready to adjourn. We have a motion.
I will make a motion that we adjourn.
And I will second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And there are none opposed. George?